You ever notice how people tell stories about the world like it's a neat puzzle? That if you just tilt the pieces right, everything makes sense? Some insist we must always look for the good, even when the room is on fire. Others say the darkness was always there. We only finally stopped pretending it wasn't. Maybe both can be true, or maybe some things simply refuse to be cheered up. For many kids in Brazil, childhood looks like this: bare feet on hot streets, a battered ball that everyone claims at dusk, laughter mixing with dust, someone shouting, "Last goal wins." Those small, ordinary moments become the whole of a life when you're young. But for too many, childhood never gets the chance to become memory. It vanishes. Between the late 1980s and the early 2000s, a pattern began to leak into the headlines and the whispers. In towns the government had long forgotten, in neighborhoods where poverty hung like humidity, boys between 8 and 14 started disappearing. Some were found later, many were not. When bodies turned up, the wounds were meant to shock, precise, cruel, and unfathomable. The word ritual haunted every report. You might remember Evandro Ramos, 6 years old, taken in Guaratuba in April 1992. His name became a symbol. It was one of those cases that drew people into endless speculation. Satanic rituals, secret societies, the kinds of stories that feed on fear. But Evandro's disappearance wasn't isolated. In that same region, nearly 30 more children vanished. Some cases went cold for decades. Some remains weren't even identified until 20 years later. Think about that. A family waiting decades for a name to be returned to a small grave. That kind of waiting hollowed people out. Then there was a name that echoed across investigations: Valentina de Andrade. She led a group called Linear Mento Universal Superior, LUS. To some, she was a spiritual leader. To others, she was the center of the storm. LUS preached strange things about purity, power, and children. Authorities began to notice overlaps between testimonies and the group's writings. Rumors spread that members had been seen where victims lived and worked. But suspicion is a small, sharp thing. It slices through lives long before a court ever gets to speak. Valentina was never charged in some of those early Southern cases. Yet her name kept surfacing. The country's fear was spreading northward, to a remote city called Altamira, a place wedged between river and forest where infrastructure was thin and hope thinner. The city was growing, but its growth hadn't reached the neighborhoods that needed it most. In those dusty parts, kids still played barefoot under mango trees, and then quietly they started disappearing. Between 1989 and 1993, the pattern in Altamira became impossible to ignore. Boys who sold sweets, who ran errands, who chased a ball, they were gone. Some were found later, some were not. The survivors came forward with stories so traumatic they became evidence and, frustratingly, weapons against them. Mishandled statements, lost reports, and children coached, whether intentionally or not, into saying what investigators wanted to hear. When a survivor later looked back and admitted that parts of his testimony had been shaped by adults around him, it didn't heal anything. It only made the whole justice process feel more fragile, more fallible. Survivors like Jose, Otonio, and Walder changed the narrative. Their wounds proved the crimes were real, but their testimonies also revealed how broken the system was. A youngster, disoriented and bleeding beside a dirt road. A boy found unconscious with his life altered forever. A child who had to undergo surgery after an attack. The images are unbearable, but the real horror isn't just what was done. It's how little was done afterward to help the living. Investigations in Altamira spun into an almost surreal focus on ritual theory. Arrests were made. A homeless man then respected local doctors. The precision of the injuries pointed toward medical knowledge, the prosecutors said. Witnesses whispered about a woman from elsewhere preaching about light and purification. Valentina's writings and recorded statements were brought into court like a paper ghost accusing her. To some, they read like doctrine. To others, nothing more than metaphors twisted into accusation. When Valentina faced a jury in December 2003 at age 72, the prosecution argued she was the intellectual architect of cruelty, not the hands that harmed, but the mind that sanctioned it. The defense fought back with travel documents, friends' testimonies, and the claim that fear had built an oversized enemy. After 17 days, the jury returned not guilty. The courtroom erupted. Relief, disbelief, tears, and the eerie quiet of a case unresolved. For Valentina, freedom; for families, no closure. And yet, even as Valentina's legal chapter closed, the story didn't end. Other verdicts had already landed. Convictions for several defendants, including doctors with long prison terms. But the system kept failing. Appeals, lost records, fugitives slipping through processes that were supposed to hold them. Justice became a flicker, then a rumor, then a broken promise. The louder the mythology about sex grew, the quieter the real victims became. While Altamira wrestled with its demons, other places were paying the price of inattention. Small towns in Maranhao, São José de Ribamar, Passo do Lumiar, São Luís and more, suffered a rash of disappearances that mirrored what had happened in the north. Over a decade, boys vanished and were either found mutilated or never found at all. There were no dramatic trials, no sensational headlines, only neglect. Families were told their children ran away. Witnesses were ignored. Police reports went unfiled. The pattern was blatant, but the gaze of the state averted itself. The truth is this: sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't a single monster in the woods. It's a system that refuses to see patterns until a mistake makes it impossible not to. In 2003, that mistake was the killing of Jonathan Vieira. It was one man's crime that finally forced authorities to look harder, and the investigation that followed revealed a network of horrors stitched together across years and states. But by then, too many names had been lost, too many small lives erased from the ledger. Listen, I want you to feel the weight of this, not as a spectacle, but as a human failing we can still change. These were children, brothers, sons, friends. Their grief didn't end in courtrooms. It lives on in empty beds and in mothers who never stopped listening for a footstep that would never come. Survivors carry scars when are invisible and hidden, and families continue to demand answers. So here's where we act, not tomorrow, not after another viral post. Now, if you're watching this, remember these names. Share these stories with care. Demand better from the institutions that should protect the most vulnerable. Insist on transparent investigations, proper forensic procedures, trained child interviewers, and consistent psychological support for survivors and families. Reach out to local organizations that support victims of violence. Volunteer your time, donate when you can, and pressure local representatives to fund child protection units and forensic training. If you see a pattern in your community, unattended disappearances, ignored reports, or children at risk, report it. Be noisy, be relentless. The system responds to attention. The lost respond to being remembered, because forgetting is part of the harm. When cases are silenced, when paperwork disappears, when the narrative that rises isn't about the victims but about theories and gossip, the children lose twice. Once to violence, and again to oblivion. We can turn that around by insisting that every child be counted, every case recorded properly, and every survivor treated with dignity and care. This is not a story that ends neatly. It's a wound that still needs tending. In the years after Altamira, some men were convicted, others fled, and a handful of names, Evandro, Leandro, Ailton, Jonathan, stayed etched in the national memory because people refused to let them fade. But many more never got the same justice. Many more were simply erased. If there's one thing I want you to take from this besides the horror and grief, it's this. Stories matter because they are the only thing that keeps people accountable. A headline can pass. A name can't leave a desk. So speak up. Share support. Demand answers. Light a torch for the ones who were snuffed out and stand with the living who carry the aftermath. That is how we make sure childhoods like theirs don't disappear without a trace. Music fades and then swells. Because at the end of the day, justice is not just a verdict read in a courtroom. It's the slow, stubborn rebuilding of lives. The tending to survivors. The memory kept alive by people who refuse to let the world forget what happened. If we do nothing, the silence wins. If we act, the silence breaks. And that, however small it might feel, is something worth fighting for.